Hi folks, this is Nick. Welcome back to my channel Funimation. Story begins with Amazon Lily from where Luffy's training going to start. Let's start the story. Chapter 2, Training starts. Amazon Lily. After the crazy adventure, hoping that the message that he intended to pass was received properly, they returned to Amazon Lily. Rayleigh and Luffy requested Hancock to take them to an island near Amazon Lily, which was called Rusukana. Jinbe, are you sure you want to go now? Luffy asked. Jinbe was standing on a whale. Yes, Luffy-kun. Then, thank you for everything, Luffy said. No, I should be the one to thank you. Even though I am ashamed that I begged you to free me from the prison. I am sorry. Jinbe bowed his head. No, don't sweat it. Luffy waved off. I wouldn't have made to Marine HQ if it wasn't you. So, show your face. You're right. There might be something I could do for you in the future. In any case, let's meet again at the Fishman Island after 2 years, Jinbe replied. Sure. Luffy waved him off. Rusukana Island. Don't worry, Luffy, I will bring you delicious food 3 times a day without fail with meat. Hancock swooned, excited at the prospect to deliver delicious food for Luffy. No, Hancock, Rayleigh interrupted. I cannot allow you to bring food and spoil his training. Hancock turned her head towards Rayleigh, anger barely simmering on the surface. Why should you be the one who decides what I should do for Luffy? I will turn you into stone depending on your answer, Hancock questioned, holding Rayleigh's nose hostage. For food, we have it in river, lakes, mountains, plants and sea. Rayleigh replied. If you can't do that kind of survival, you cannot live the life of pirate. This island is perfect for Luffy's training as it has 48 seasons per year. He is correct, Hancock. I want to train seriously and become very strong. Even though the prospect of delicious food interests me, I don't want it. Thank you for the offer. I have already experience on living this kind of life. Luffy said, drool leaking a bit. He quickly wiped it and grinned at Hancock. Hancock frowned a bit at the rejection, but quickly brushed it off and rushed near Luffy. If it is for Luffy's sake, I think I could do it. But how would I not see you for 2 years? Sadness was visible clearly on her face. Rayleigh-san, can she visit me once in a month? Luffy requested, hoping he would agree. Normally Rayleigh would have rejected it, but the power levels of Luffy were high for some reason and his guts told there wasn't much he would do here. And the hopeful expression of Hancock cannot be ignored. Alright, once a month only. But you should promise you wouldn't bring any food or deliver him in between the meetings, Rayleigh said. Hancock immediately agreed with several nods, not that she had any intention of following the food rule. Then Luffy-kun, I think it's time for us to go. Alright, old man. Luffy thanked Hancock and her crew for everything again, with the promise of meeting them again after a month. Luffy, please be safe, Hancock prayed. As they were walking inside, Rayleigh pointed out something to Luffy. Luffy ought to remember that tree. It is the safest place on this island. Even the beasts are afraid to come near it. He said, pointing out the tree, which had a huge, pale white bark and leaves spread out like mushroom at the top. Luffy noted it. As he looked around, he could spot various animals, which also had extinct animals similar to those in Little Garden. It had various types of dinosaurs, tigers and elephants of huge sizes. Almost everything felt huge. But Luffy wasn't intimidated. Rayleigh stopped at a point, which was a huge opening. This place was said to be inhabited once. But they all were either destroyed or left this island as the wilderness was too crazy to support those kinds of human settlements. Rayleigh explained. Now, I wanted to ask you something. Rayleigh said. Sure. Go ahead, old man. Why did you mention that you wanted to improve your hockey? Did you have prior training about hockey from anywhere? He questioned. I am not sure. I know what hockey is. I also know how to use them. But they all feel weird. It is like I have learned about it somewhere. But I don't remember how. I also know I didn't know about hockey prior to Marineford War. It feels like something has unlocked inside me," Luffy said, frowning a little. "You know how to use all the hokis? Including Conquerors?" Rayleigh asked, bewildered. "Yes, and also other things with my devil fruit," Luffy answered. Perhaps can you demonstrate me your hoki?" Rayleigh questioned, ignoring the part about devil fruit. He will come back to it later. He didn't want to doubt his protege, but things leading up to this pointed out that he didn't have any knowledge about hoki prior. And learning hoki is not an easy thing. It would take years for someone to learn the basics of it. "Yeah, sure. How about on that elephant that is trying to attack us?" Luffy asked. Rayleigh nodded. Luffy went forward and closed his eyes. He concentrated on his observation hoki. "The elephant is going to try to hit me on my left side with its trunk," Luffy said. Rayleigh's eyes were wide as the elephant was still quite a bit far from Luffy. It took almost 15 seconds for the elephant to come near to Luffy. As it spotted him, it swung its trunk, exactly mimicking what Luffy said earlier. "Left foot forward, right middle swing," Luffy said while dodging the previous hit. Similar to the first time, the elephant swung its trunk on the middle from the right. Rayleigh was in awe as well as shocked that not only did Luffy have observation haki, but he could see almost 15 seconds into the future, which was a form of advanced observational hoki. Luffy continued to dodge the hits that the elephant was attempting to make, as Luffy was constantly switching his place way before the elephant could perform its hits, confusing it. Finally tired, it stopped its attacks and charged right at Luffy with its right foot directly coming to stomp him flat. But Luffy raised his right hand, black sheen coating it and a golden aura covering his hands. As the elephant came down with its foot, Luffy's hand barely touched it before the elephant was blasted behind far away, crashing into several trees. "That was Ryo," Luffy mentioned. Once again, Rayleigh was astonished. Not only did Luffy know the basics, but the advanced form of armament hoki, also called Ryo. "Wait, Ryo? Luffy-kun, how did you know about the word Ryo?" Rayleigh questioned. Luffy shrugged. "No idea, it just came into mind while I was doing this. I was fighting with K." Luffy clutched his head in pain as he couldn't complete the sentence. Rayleigh watched this with silent contemplation. He knows something was up, but he couldn't completely point out what was the cause. He looked at the elephant, which he was sure that it was dead, or rather very injured. The aura that flared when Luffy hit it was very potent. "Luffy-kun, that wasn't your full power, was it?" Rayleigh questioned. Luffy shook his head. "Nope, I had a lot more to show. But I don't think there is much that could provide me a good fight." Luffy trailed off. Rayleigh felt a strange excitement. "Then, why don't you fight me? I think you can go all out considering this island is free from humans. You won't hurt anything that's important." He felt sorry for the animals. Maybe. Perhaps not. "Oh, sure. Let's do it," Luffy said, excitement visible clearly in his face. Rayleigh drew his sword in a well-practiced manner, a black sheen coated it. Red aura covered it, with black and red lighting traveling down the length. Luffy clenched his fists and brought it to a fighting stance. It was covered with hoki and golden aura raging on it. Similar black and red lighting traveled and expanded into the horizon. Rayleigh's eyes widened for a second, before he composed himself. The kid also knew the advanced version of Conqueror's hoki. Perhaps this won't be an easy fight after all. A silence befell on the battlefield. It was eerie and unnerving. Both the fights were calm, but their eyes were sharp, contesting that to an eagle. The animals around them seemingly held their breath, locking their eyes on the new strangers to the island. The silence was broken suddenly by a huge boom that rocked the island. The sword and the fist clashed each other, or rather the auras clashed. The fists weren't touching each other. Lightning was flashing around, breaking trees apart, and the animals close to the vicinity went unconscious. Both tried to get the higher ground, but simply it was stuck in the same position. Rayleigh narrowed his eyes and pushed the sword, forcing Luffy to jump back to prevent himself from getting cut. They clashed again, with Luffy swinging his leg, trying to attack Rayleigh in his waist. Rayleigh brought his sword and kept it vertically, stopping the leg. They continued to exchange blows, with Luffy shifting into Gear 2 and sometimes Gear 3. Even though they seemed to be equal, it was clear to them that Rayleigh had the upper hand. They locked again into a power struggle. But Rayleigh got frustrated and forced through the clash with his sword nearly aiming for Luffy's head. They both panted, pausing their fight. "Luffy-kun, I can still see that you are not going out fully with your power. Why hold it? Is it some form of mockery?" Rayleigh questioned. Luffy immediately shook his head. "No, I was warming up. I couldn't immediately access it considering it feels like this is the first time using Haki," Luffy said. "But now, I think I can do it. Let's fight again." Luffy brought his hand up to his mouth and bit into it. He started blowing into it, causing his body to inflate. Smoke covered the place as his body started to cover in Haki. Gear 4, Bound Man. Gamu Gamu no. The smoke immediately cleared up, Luffy dashing forward with impossible speeds. Rayleigh brought his sword up to block the strike. It was more powerful than he expected. Kong Gun. Luffy's hands compressed like a spring, shot out into full length, increasing the power of the punch with the tension present in his hand. Rayleigh flew back several meters, crashing into several rocks before skidding in to stop. He looked at Luffy, who was clad with red haki, bouncing on his feet. A round halo made of smoke formed around his neck and black lightning traveled down and around his body. They clashed again, with Luffy using his Rhino Schneider move, which was blocked by an uppercut from Rayleigh. Now, Rayleigh not only used his sword, but also started using various techniques that he learned during his travel, and his speed matched Luffy easily. They exchanged blows after blows, with both getting hit several times. Luffy was hit more than Rayleigh, which still meant that Luffy wasn't up to Rayleigh's full power yet. A strong punch on the mid from Rayleigh sent him back crashing into some trees. "TCH, it looks like this isn't going to be enough to match him. I think I have to use that," Luffy said. Rayleigh looked at him confused as to why he stopped. But then he felt it, an enormous spike in the aura. An interesting sound ringed through the battlefield. Sounds of drumming filled the air, power resonating with it. Rayleigh brought his sword up, a grin present on his face. He was excited to fight with something that held so much power. Smoke covered Luffy as he went through his transformation. As the smoke cleared, Rayleigh could see the transformation. It sent a wave of nostalgia upon him for some reason. He then realized it was something he read about in Laugh Tale. Gear 5. His body was floating in air, his hair and eyebrows completely white. The previous smoke halo turned into fire, and it was swirling around him. His face etching a wide grin, it was similar to that of his captain. His expression was goofy, yet the power was not. Then his body moved. No, it blinked into existence before Rayleigh. His fist clashed into his sword and bent it into weird angles. Rayleigh's eye widened a bit, before he poured more Haki and fought with renewed vigor. They clashed again, Luffy's legs spinning like a pinwheel. They continued with their hits, the world around him were bouncing like castle, because of Luffy's power. But it could be seen that both are getting tired. Rayleigh then did something that was unexpected to Luffy. He brought his sword through an upper middle swing, but in the middle of the swing, he changed the tactics and hit Luffy with all his Haki in his head and continued with another hit with his leg, knocking him out. Luffy woke up after a while, the concussion on his head almost healed. It throbbed lightly, but he ignored it and sat upright. Rayleigh was sitting on a log opposite to him, cooking meat. His mouth drooled at the sight. Apparently, Rayleigh also noticed that he was awake and invited him to eat with him. He sat in front of him and started gulping down food at impossible speeds. After all, he was very tired with the sparring. "So, Luffy-kun, you were way better than what I thought you would be," Rayleigh started. "I thought you wouldn't know much, if anything at all, about Haki. Your records before the war also pointed out the same. I don't know how you learned about so quickly, Not only that, you also know advanced forms of it. Luffy just nodded. Rayleigh continued, I am not sure what to make of it. Grand Line is a vast sea. I have seen a lot of things and experienced many. But I don't know how to classify you. Luffy agreed. He also felt worried about this. It felt that he knew how to fight like that. He felt like he experienced fighting and improving in the middle of the fight. That is also why it felt natural. Yet, for some reason, it didn't feel like he actually earned it. My mind feels locked up. It is like I couldn't access some of it. If I think, my brain hurts, Luffy complained. I am not entirely sure about why that is happening, but I am sure you will figure it out. But there is one thing I am sure from the fight. Rayleigh said. Oh? What is it? Luffy questioned. I know that your devil fruit isn't Gami Gamu no Mi. While you were knocked out, I thought about the devil fruits that I read in the book. I don't remember reading about Gami Gamu no Mi. The grin and the heartbeat when you transformed into your Gear 5th was something else, Rayleigh said. Luffy felt confused. His entire life, he always thought this was Gami Gamu no Mi. Sure, it wasn't the best power in the world, but he was content with it. But now, that heartbeat reminds me of something that I came across in my travels. But I think he will have to think a bit more about it before confirming. Rayleigh said. So, should I not call my fruit Gami Gamu no Mi? Luffy asked. You decide what you want to call your devil fruit. I'll try to find about the original name anyway. Meanwhile, let's talk about our training. Rayleigh said. Luffy sat straight. This was something that he came here for. To train and get stronger. If I have to be honest, you have great strength. Enough to stand among the top, even in New World. There isn't much I can train you on about. Rayleigh said. Luffy felt a bit disappointed at that. He had an inkling that this would be the case. Luffy was as shrewd in observation, especially with power. He was reckless, not completely mindless. That doesn't mean there isn't anything to teach at all. You can learn basics of different fighting techniques that I know of. You could also learn to use a weapon. Especially a saber or a staff would be useful for your fighting style. Rayleigh mentioned. Luffy frowned at the mention of studies. But then lit up at fighting techniques. True, there were a lot of things that he still didn't know. Going about just jumping and relying on instincts is not going to help him always. He also had used bow staff during his early days, it always felt fitting. But later on, after Sawbell's death, he didn't feel comfortable using it. Perhaps he could use it now. Your hockey is good, but still could be improved. I reckon, by the time we end this training, you will be very powerful, only to be contested among the top players of the New World. Rayleigh said. Luffy nodded. That sounded very nice. If what it takes to protect his crew is to be the strongest in the world, he would do it. Then, let's old man, wait. Luffy paused Rayleigh and ran up to the safest place in the island. He placed his hat and the viewer card that was given by Rayleigh. Zoro. Sanji. Nami. Robin. Usopp. Chopper. Frankie. Brook. I promised to become much stronger, so that I could protect your dreams and reach our goals together, Luffy said. It's a promise. He went back to Rayleigh and smiled. Let's start, old man. Yeah, it's Rayleigh-san. No, is it Master Rayleigh? Or Professor Rayleigh? Whatever. Rayleigh said. And hence began the training of 2 years. It was pretty clear to Luffy soon that sparring and learning with Rayleigh was no joke. It was pretty hard, considering there was no breaks in between. There was a power difference at start, but Luffy's growth was very high. The gap soon started to get less. Luffy started to win more. He learned the basics of Rokushiki. Even though he had the base knowledge of Zoro, the rest were very useful to learn. His speeds in Gear 2 were very high, almost rivaling the speed of Kizaru. He also learned various forms of martial arts, which included fishman karate. Manipulating the water molecules present in the air to achieve the desired effect was astonishing. He completed most of this in 2 months, which was surprising to Rayleigh. He locked his devil fruit powers with sea stone and forced him to use only physical strength with restriction in hockey for the next 2 months. Suffice to say, it felt like he came back to square one again. But his resistance to sea stone increased drastically. When the restriction for hockey lifted, his hockey felt much stronger. He concentrated on increasing his observation range in his future sight. This was also when Rayleigh dropped the truth about his devil fruit. Luffy-kun, after observing your gear 5th form for 2 months, I think I am sure about what it is. Rayleigh said. Luffy was pretty excited to learn the real name of his devil fruit. I think it is the Hito no Mi, model Nika. Rayleigh said. It is a mythical zone devil fruit. Mythical zone, huh? That's so cool, Luffy gushed. Rayleigh continued, Luffy-kun, I know you hate knowing about the One Piece and treasures, so I won't spoil about it, but I know this is something you must know if you want to get strong. Luffy gulped. Yes, he didn't want to get spoiled, it would ruin his fun, but his desire to get strong was larger. So, he nodded. Every devil fruit has a will. It is the representation of people's belief. This fruit, by some impossible odds, fell into your hands. This was the fruit we learned while we learned about the true history of the world. Rayleigh said. Luffy listened with rapt attention. It represents the will of warrior of liberation sun god Nika. Though the user's body gains the property of rubber in combat, it is only limited by the user's imagination. Meaning, it is only limited by your imagination. It is supposedly the most ridiculous power in the world. Saying Luffy was in awe would be an understatement. Imagine having a god as your fruit and having whatever power in the world. How cool is that? So that means I can't do whatever I want? Luffy questioned. I don't think you can do everything. There has to be some restrictions. But you won't be able to know unless you try it. Rayleigh winked. It was a huge revelation. If anyone got the wind of such fruit in existence, they would do anything to get their hands on it, but then not all could access its full power, not as it was mentioned in the diary of him. But if it was Luffy, he could do it. No. He will do it. He will become the embodiment of Joy Boy of the new era soon. Not that Rayleigh would mention that name to Luffy. And hence concludes the 2nd chapter of the fic. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching this video. If you like, please like, share and subscribe and wait for my next video.